Republican National Committee Chief Strategist and Communications Director Sean Spicer joins us now. Sean, thanks for taking a few minutes. So you just heard that comment. I asked Congressman Marino, does he think the RNC has been fair to him? You heard his response. What's your reaction to it?
Well, again, I think it's a talking point. I've yet to see anyone point to a specific example. Look, Katie Tur's analysis was spot on. The fact of the matter is, and even Congressman Marino noted, that all of these rules are set by the individual states. Right? And so you may not like the process, but the states set the rules in each of the states and the 6 territories in the District of Columbia that are now being followed. They were all submitted to the RNC on October 1st of last year. They were made available not only to the campaigns, but to the media and to the public. And so everybody knew what the rules were. And again, I understand that people may not like the process or, quote, find it archaic, as the congressman said, but no one didn't know what it was. Right? There's a lot of things that I don't like the process of. I don't like the speed limit on my street, but I know what it is, and I know I have to follow it or I'm going to get a ticket. I know when I have to register to vote, and if I don't, I know that I can't vote. I know when the early vote, registrations are in Virginia, where I live. So I understand that sometimes people may not like the process, but the facts are that the process was very open and very transparent for all to see and all to follow. Now, if a campaign doesn't stay up on that, then that's on them, not on us. And I think that what the RNC has done is we have tried to go through a really overwhelming educational process and get the word out, because as you previously noted, I mean, this process has largely gone unnoticed for the last 40 years since the last contested convention in 1976. So now that people are paying attention to it, there's a lot more interest in a lot of these contests and a lot of the process. I understand that. We need to continue to educate the voters about what that process is. But to be clear, it's the same process that we followed for a century.
And I take your point. For instance, Colorado, it really does look like Donald Trump just got out-organized there. The rules were clear from last August. He got out-organized. But what about that point that Congressman Marino's making? It talks about double-agent delegates. And what they're talking about there are states where the process of getting delegates in place for the Republican National Convention is out of the control of these campaigns. In some cases, it started well back last year before this campaign was really underway. In other cases, the state parties control who some of these delegates are. And when he says double-agent delegates, what he's talking about is Donald Trump won the state. He won the primary. He won the caucus. And the delegate selection's out of his control. And so his delegate slots then get filled by supporters of other candidates. Is that fair?
No, in most cases, look, the delegates started running a few months ago. It was incumbent upon the campaigns to begin the process of getting individuals to run for those slots back then. So I actually disagree with that. When you look at how most of these states do it, and New York's coming up, same process, where delegates, individuals at the congressional level are filing to run as delegates. They'll get elected at the congressional delegate level, and then there's an at-large portion they'll get elected at the state convention. It's incumbent upon the campaigns to get their people to run for those slots. If they don't do that, I understand that that's a concern to them, but the fact of the matter is they understood the process, and that's how the system works in each of these states. Again, each of them set their own policy, as the congressman pointed out. But look, here's a really interesting thing, Steve, when you talk about fairness. Donald Trump, for instance, has gotten about 37% of the vote. He's gotten 45% of the delegates. In some of the states where it's been winner take all, if he's met that threshold, he or another candidate's gotten all the delegates. I understand that when you don't get the outcome that you want in any circumstance, whether it's a sporting event or a political contest, you immediately cry foul and blame the process. But the fact of the matter is that when the process has benefited them, they don't seem to complain too much. When Colorado's been on the calendar forever, one complaint about Colorado or the process leading up to it. There were surrogates from all the campaigns at the Colorado convention trying to woo delegates, and it wasn't until after the end of the process when suddenly people started complaining about the process. So until the outcome occurs, no one seems to have an issue with it. It's only until that occurs. I find that, that's sort of an interesting fact when it comes down to how this is actually all unraveling.
Just one bigger picture question here. And you mentioned it's been 40 years since any of these state rules in most cases that anybody's even looked at. So I get that. I wonder, though, bigger picture, when we finish this primary process, I'm remembering the Democrats in the 80s with Jesse Jackson's campaigns went through this. They revisited their rules after they had a primary season, kind of like you guys are having right now. Do you think the Republican Party might, when this is all over, revisit these rules and come up with some kind of national standard the way the Democrats did in the 1980s for how these delegates are given out?
Well, first of all, the Democrats, if you look at our system versus theirs, we're much more democratic than the Democrats are. They have super delegates. A fifth of their delegates are completely unelected.
But let's, I take your, hang on, just Sean, one thing. I take your point on the super delegates. Specifically what I'm saying here, though, is how they're given out when you win the primary and caucus. They're very proportional on the Democratic side there.
Right, understood. And what I would say to you is that just when you look at what the reform that they did, they made it actually less democratic. They instituted superdelegates so that Washington insiders could actually override the votes of the people. What we have done is we are a states' rights party. That's what Republicans are all about, giving states and localities the empowerment they need to do what's best for the people there. So a caucus might work better in Iowa than a primary. We've given them the flexibility to do what's best in their state or territory. I think that's why we're a different party than the Democrats, because we believe in the states. Every convention, every 4 years, we do revisit the rules. And sometimes a state will say, hey, we'd rather have a caucus. Kentucky went from a primary to a caucus. States have that flexibility. So there are changes every time. But one last point, Steve. It's interesting because I want to be clear. While the rules haven't been tested this way in 40 years, don't mistake this. Campaigns, like last time in 2012, both the Romney campaign and the Paul campaign very much understood the rules and played them hard to the limit, because so it's not a question of it was just they weren't as brought out into the public and that we weren't talking about the rules on TV every day. There's no question that campaigns going back the last 40 years have clearly understood the rules. It's just that at a certain point in the campaign it hasn't mattered as much, or it hasn't bubbled up as public as it is now. But make no mistake that any campaign worth its salt has understood the rules and understood key deadlines and how to organize.
All right, Sean Spicer with the RNC. Thanks.